A few hours before his world changed, Yamamoto was hunched over the bathroom, brush in hand, bloodhound focused on scrubbing away every last stain from the tiles. He moved on to the drain, where he worked with diligent precision, determined to leave no trace of dirt behind. It might have seemed ordinary, but for Yamamoto, a first-year university student, cleaning was deeply satisfying. Watching the grime vanish stroke by stroke, he felt a sense of accomplishment that nothing else delivered. Sitting atop a small stool, he eyed the final touches, convinced that today, at least, he'd leave the bathroom spotless. To Yamamoto, cleaning was simple. The harder he worked, the better the reward. Unlike people who could be irrational and unfair, cleaning always made sense. After finishing, he wiped sweat from his brow and grinned, quietly admiring his work. The feeling was incredible, but his peace was shattered when he checked his phone and saw the time. Panic surged. He was late for his part-time job. Shifting gears, Yamamoto rushed to his workplace. The night shifts paid more, but the convenience store was in a sleepy residential area, and customers were rare. It was especially slow tonight. Propped on an elbow, face in hand, he stared at the checkout monitor, bored out of his mind, wondering how the business even stayed afloat. Suddenly, a blur on the security camera snapped him awake. A lone silhouette entered the shop. Moments later, the customer set her items on the counter. But before he could begin the usual patter, she called him by name. It took a heartbeat for him to recognize the voice. Hayashi, his old high school classmate. Shocked, Yamamoto struggled to believe she was here in Tokyo too. She asked if he lived nearby. He replied that his apartment was just around the corner, and she mirrored the sentiment in her own way. When she learned he attended University K, she praised him, recalling he'd always been sharp. The small talk had him reeling, and he wondered why Hayashi, of all people, was chatting so casually tonight. As Yamamoto scanned her groceries, he couldn't help but think, nothing like this ever happened in high school. Only 4 months since graduation, yet she seemed completely transformed. In his memory, she had been the apathetic queen of the classroom, gazing dreamily out the window, her head propped on her hand, never really caring. An image flashed, her eraser rolling to the floor, his own internal debate about whether to help, and ultimately picking it up for her only to be met with her trademark look of disgust. He placed the eraser on her desk. Her response? Pure disdain. Hayashi was always an enigma to him, popular, pretty, constantly confessed to, but with a streak of scorn that earned her the nickname, the arrogant queen. Back in the present, Yamamoto decided it was best to stick to business. "Do you need a bag?" he asked. But as she reached across the counter, something on her wrist caught his attention. Bruises, unmistakable and raw. He discreetly gestured. Hayashi recoiled, quickly covering her arm, visibly uncomfortable. He pressed gently and she finally admitted, voice barely above a whisper, that her boyfriend hit her. The revelation left Yamamoto paralyzed, heart pounding. Probing further, he learned that they were living together, that her boyfriend currently waited at home. But at the mention of her boyfriend, Hayashi reverted to her old self, prickly, impatient, accusing him of being too nosy. She turned to leave, but Yamamoto couldn't shake the worry. The words echoed in his mind. Her boyfriend hits her. Why had she admitted as much to him of all people? He realized with a jolt that the queen had shown him vulnerability. Panic rising, he called out, offering in a desperate, clumsy gesture for her to stay at his apartment. Hayashi misunderstood him, bristling at the suggestion, assuming some ulterior motive. Flustered, Yamamoto insisted it was just for her safety, that if she didn't trust him, he'd hand over his spare key and sleep in a cyber cafe. He urged her not to go back to her boyfriend's place, or better yet, to return to her parents. But then she revealed a new blow. Her parents had disowned her over her relationship, even cutting her off financially and forcing her to drop out of college. A heavy silence cloaked the store. Still, Yamamoto repeated his plea, "Please don't go home tonight." He'd prepare his spare key and text her the address. To his surprise, Hayashi declined. She'd wait until his shift was over. Her hands twisted nervously in her hair as she sat to wait, an anxious energy radiating from her. The following hour crawled by. Yamamoto watched her, thinking back to the girl she'd been at school, confident, surrounded by friends, nothing like the anxious, bruised figure before him now. After his shift, they headed back to his small apartment. He bragged about how tidy it was, but Hayashi, ever blunt, commented it looked more like a storage closet. He shrugged, offered her a seat, and poured barley tea. Even there, with the ice clinking in their glasses, Yamamoto felt unreal. Hayashi, queen of his high school memories, now sitting quietly at his table. She downed the tea in one gulp, then with a faint, rueful smile, joked that she owed him now. Yamamoto brushed it off. He'd only done what anyone would have. At last, Hayashi broke through the awkwardness, saying they both needed to cool off. When he asked if her boyfriend's violence was just a bad mood, she tried to excuse it, insisting it was rare, trigger only when work went badly, and that she should have supported him better. Surprised, Yamamoto remarked that wasn't the Hayashi he remembered from school. She snapped, "People change." He told her straight, if her story was true, he shouldn't have asked her not to go home. But she could stay with him tonight, he said. Taken aback, she thanked him, and in a teasing tone noted he was saying things he never would have dared in high school. With that, Hayashi asked to use his shower, and if he had spare clothes, he offered her men's clothes. As she disappeared into the bathroom, Yamamoto waited, nerves high, mind racing. The sound of running water filled the tiny apartment. Yamamoto tried to calm his thoughts, but the surrealness overwhelmed him. Just months ago, Hayashi was unreachable, almost royal. Now she was in his shower. Hayashi stepped out, towel draped over her head. She remarked, amused, that his bathroom was absurdly clean. Yamamoto managed a shaky smile, and then froze. Bruises mottled her legs, old and new. He couldn't hide the shock as he commented on how bad they looked. Hayashi responded coldly. Her boyfriend was a lost cause, and what did it matter when the bruises happened? That steel in her voice warned him not to pry further, but he pressed anyway, telling her she shouldn't stay with someone like that. She fired back. What do you know about my situation? He backed down, admitting he didn't know, but he'd feel responsible if something happened to her. Despite her irritation, he insisted. She shouldn't rush. She needed time to think. Hayashi teased him. No wonder he never had a girlfriend. As the night wore on, Yamamoto offered her his bed, taking the hard floor for himself. Sleep eluded him, the room thick with unspoken fears. At last, Hayashi's voice pierced the dark, inviting, ambiguous. Did he want to do it? Yamamoto panicked, sputtered, insisted his invite was nothing like that. She laughed, closing the distance with a surprise hug. Flustered, he fumbled for words, while Hayashi teased about his inexperience. Suddenly, she confided, her boyfriend hadn't always been violent. He'd once been sweet, attentive, until everything changed when they moved in together. She'd lost count of the insults, the humiliation, the sudden blows. When she offered to work, he mocked her lack of a college degree. Yamamoto, stricken, could only say she'd been through a lot. Hayashi seemed shocked by his empathy, but he quickly brushed it off. Just go to sleep, he muttered, face burning.